everybody, wait a minute. I mix what I like, what I like. I mix what I like. I mix what I like, what I like. Mix what I like is exactly where you want and need to be. I mix what I like, organic, vegan, soul food from your immediate diet. Live healthy. Live healthy. I mix what I like, what I like.
We're here on I Mix What I Like. You may check us out on iMixWhatILike.org, where you can see all these other shows and what my daddy liked. And
what's up, world? Welcome to I Mix What I Like right here at I Mix What I Like. I Mix What I Like live. Jared Ball, happy to be your host. Please do, as you come on in, like, share, subscribe, support the platform however you like. And welcome. Apologies for the mix-up. I'm not even entirely sure what happened. I'm not entirely sure what happened. And for some reason, I don't feel like the mic sounds right, but nonetheless, okay, I got some stuff set up, got a little schedule. Oh, word, were you? Oh, thank you, Alejandro. Yeah. Thank you very much. I had a really good time at the People's Forum. Salute to them. And it was good to see you and others. What's up? Millennials are killing capitalism. So we're gonna come back. We're gonna come back to the discussion that, or part of it, because I know it's an ongoing, but part of a discussion that's been being had on millennials are killing capitalism with Dr. OrisanmiBurton. And so salute to you all as well. Thanks for coming through. Again, apologies for the mix up, everybody. I don't know what happened with the I don't have an answer for what happened. So peace, everybody, but welcome. And there's a lot to get to, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Yeah, VanJones, prime example of representation politics. Where's the money? I got sent this thing that I got sent. I could only get through a couple minutes of it, but enough is there. But in part because of this track I got put on through Millennials Are Killing Capitalism, I wanted to, there might be some adjustment to how much emphasis is put on given to Brother Van this evening. So we'll see. But again, I do appreciate you folks for coming through, and welcome. So let's get started. So the president of our university at Morgan State sent us an article to the university, and which has a provocative headline. And beyond provocation, a wild message. So it's a New York Times piece. Oh man, all the settings got wiped out too. All right. The end of the university as we know it, from the 16th last week. Guest essay by Megan O'Rourke. And as it starts here, the rumors had been building for months. The Trump administration was coming for the universities, and weeks after the president issues the first executive orders in this term, the effects rippled through my academic world. A Rutgers conference on HBCUs was canceled. Graduate students on visas asked a professor I know if it was safe for them to travel. A colleague at Public University texted about an undergraduate crying in his office, worried about the job landscape. There was news of endangered climate projects, grant pages disappearing and sometimes later reappearing as people were applying to them, and forestalled scientific programs of all kinds, including one at Columbia's Maternal Health Center studying how to reduce America's maternal mortality rate. Felt some of that in my classrooms a little bit. There's been some concern, but that's where the article starts. And please do check out Saturdays with Renee from earlier today, where we had, among other things, a good conversation with Amandla Thomas Johnson about the really further abuse of state power and collusion with the university there at Cornell to attack students, most specifically Mamadou Tal, Mandla himself, and others for supporting Palestinians. I've talked a little bit about how that's been discussed and dealt with on our campus, but this article is talking about the broader attack on universities in general. Conservatives have been trying to reshape the American university since the federal government began funding it in earnest in the mid-20th century, but now the Trump administration appears prepared to destroy it, talking about the pulling of $400 million in federal grants from Columbia and the threat that means and may mean for other universities. Christopher Russo, a key architect of the assault, has been explicit about the strategy. Use financial pressure to put universities into what he called existential terror, making compliance seem like the only viable option, forcing them to dismantle programs and reshape hiring and curriculums. So I mentioned at the People's Forum, I actually mentioned Russo and the contradictions of agreeing with his criticism of Ibram Kendi in many ways, but obviously not for the same political purposes. But what it means when, as OrisanmiBurton has talked about, and Jared Ware and Dylan Rodriguez, at least in terms of the folks most impacting me on this topic, the liberal counterinsurgency. But obviously here, Russo is talking about this mythology that campuses are some left-wing, revolutionary training ground. This assault isn't happening in a vacuum, of course. Decades of conservative attacks have primed the public to see universities as elitist indoctrination centers. During the culture wars of the 80s and 90s, right-wing philanthropists poured millions of dollars into demonizing higher education as infested by political correctness demonizing higher education as infested by political correctness, whose advocates supposedly pervade a dogmatic brand of left-wing identity politics while suppressing free speech and conservative discourse on their campuses, which is just really a bizarre way of describing what's going on there. Gallup polls found that in 2015, 57% of Americans had a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in higher education, a figure that had dropped to 36% by 2023. Among Republicans, it cratered from 56 to 20%. So just the idea of higher education, Musk and them have been overt in saying you don't need a college education. Indeed, it's crucial to acknowledge the qualitative difference between any excesses the left has committed in the enforcement of campus norms and speech and the federal government's decision to use the full force of state power to prevent people from saying things it doesn't like. And I do appreciate that distinction that the author here called out that distinction. I mean, because to the extent that there is a left-wing presence on university campuses, the idea that it has an impact commensurate with what we're seeing with this is just absurd. And the idea that anyone on the so-called left in this country would behave in this kind of aggressive way in defense of their own politics is also silly. For much of its history, the American university has stood at the intersection of knowledge production and national interest. The Morrill Act of 1862 which established land-grant universities, was one of the first federal efforts to expand access to higher education, aligning colleges with the needs of a growing industrial economy. In 1890, the second Morrill Act brought funding to historically Black colleges and universities and reinforced the idea that higher education was a public good, one that served not only individuals but also the broader needs of the nation. But it was World War II and the Cold War that fundamentally transformed universities into engines of state power, binding research to military and technological supremacy. Which, of course, is a far more accurate way to understand what's going on at these universities, as opposed to this idea that, again, they're just producing revolutionaries. Oh, wait a second, that's not supposed to be there. Sorry about that. That they're just promoting revolutionaries is crazy. By the 1960s, in the wake of Russia's launch of the Sputnik satellite, America was seized by a national fervor for scientific and technological education. Federal R&D funding skyrocketed. Knowledge in this area was not partisan; it was a national asset. And again, this is the time period that we see this overlap that Tip of the Spear talks about, that Science of Coercion talks about, that, in other words, this overlap of the rise of prisons, counterinsurgency techniques being applied in the United States, the rise of the mass communications research apparatus, which I'm going to come back to in just a moment, and the development of a lot of the cognitive infrastructure that has evolved since. In which we find ourselves today. While the university thrived on public funding, the presence of left-wing voices among its students and faculty members made it a target for conservatives, who, as evidenced by the Red Scare, were already profoundly distrustful of left-leaning academics. Ronald Reagan targeted Berkeley's free speech movement in his campaign to become governor of California. And as we always like to note around here, he died during my wedding. And yeah, I guess that was it from what I wanted to. Yeah, that's what that's what I wanted to focus on. I guess that was all I had from that article there, apparently. But essentially the point being that there's some concern about what's happening in higher education that has been a target. but the more likely outcome is that this moment will close rather than expand the range of what is possible. That's what, yeah. Because what we are witnessing is not just an attack on academia or a set of fiscal reforms or a painful political rebalancing. It is an attack on the conditions that allow free thought to exist. We may not yet know the full cost, but we will feel its consequences for decades. I think that's a good way for them to have ended that article, and it makes a lot of sense that whatever the outcome of this, it will not, this is not going to be an improvement. And that would be the case probably with anything that happens over the next 4 to however many years, that it's going to reset conditions ever rightward to the extent there is any recovery at all. And unless there is greater degrees or becomes greater degrees of interruption. So, all right. So that was where that's where I wanted to start. But the, fortuitously, because it was not initially part of the plan, but fortuitously, I was sent something as I was getting ready, and it fits right along with, and when I saw the name, I immediately remembered, I recognized it. So if folks remember, starting with when I was looking at these, the cartoons that promote capitalism, and part of the sort of the look into that, or the investigation into that, brought my attention to this little known, I think little known, lesser known, Hillsdale College. Oh boy. And Hillsdale College was part of the conservative, speaking again of universities, of the university system and colleges in this country, the idea that, although I'm sure the proponents of Hillsdale, or the supporters of Hillsdale would argue that Hillsdale is, part of the necessary response to the right wing, but they have online courses you can take. And this one, which, so I guess, some sort of warning. They have a course called The American Left: From Liberalism to Despotism. So okay, if we remember when where Hillsdale figured in to that investigation, or the research that overlaps with my own, is that Hillsdale was part of the outreach for the National Association of Manufacturers, which after the Second World War became the still to this day wildly powerful lobbying body for the corporate world. And part of what they did was to create propaganda that promoted the free market fundamentalism, and the return back to private enterprise, after everybody saw in the Second World War that government can have a positive impact on managing labor, rising or raising the salaries of workers and their productivity and all this other kind of good stuff. And after the Second World War, the National Association of Manufacturers, or NAM, got highly involved in producing propaganda, including cartoons that would get everybody back on track with market fundamentalism and capitalism. They were part of the group that said that we need an equivalent for capitalism, that the Communist Manifesto was for communism and that the Bible was for Christians. So they funded their version, which is Capitalism and Freedom by Milton Friedman, and the work of conservative economists, and have used that to, so a lot of what ends up saturating even Black media outlets and Black targeting media outlets is this very white conservative propaganda that comes from the business community. So when I got this said, I said, oh wow, Hillsdale immediately jumped out. And then this trailer, again, speaking to this whole thing of what is the design and the frame from the right of the so-called left and of universities. This is perfect. So let's check this out.
Probably the most common question that I'm asked as a professor at Hillsdale is, what happened to my country? You know, when they poll Americans, they find that a vast majority don't think the world is going to be a better place for their own children. In this course, we're going to look at who the mid-century liberals were and the changes that they introduced into American society. We're also going to look at the radicals, the counterculturalists of the 1960s, and the changes that remain with us today. We're going to look at the group called the neoliberals, and the formation of an oligarchy in the American regime in the 1980s and the 1990s. And finally, we'll see how those radicals in the 60s made peace with those neoliberal oligarchs in the Great Awakening in Barack Obama's second term, and the threat that it poses to Republican liberties for us today. These movements are promising to strip away all of the rights and the freedoms that give life happiness and meaning and purpose. I don't think people understand the source of most current ideologies. And what this course is going to show us is where they originated and how they took control of our society. You'll see the changes that have taken place in America, the ideas that are responsible for those changes, and how we as Americans can challenge those ideas and reclaim our American heritage. This is our course on the American left. Let's begin.
So, as was said to me by the person who sent this, and again, I don't want to drag them on without confirming in advance, which I did not do, their name into this, but their summary of it is perfect. It says that they're kicking the left out of the university and will then rebrand that history. So, given the article that was sent to me by our president of our beloved Morgan State, and then that from the New York Times, and then seeing this here, it all does dovetail. It overlaps beautifully. That rebrand universities as revolutionary outposts, get rid of left wing folks, deport, fire, and rebrand it as some sort of, and this, because this was also sent, and then rebrand, once you get rid of the left wing, you can rebrand them as something else. So Stephen Thrasher is being terminated. And all of it is about his involvement in pro-Palestinian protest. It has nothing to do with anything. So it's just one of an increasing number of cases where folks are just being quietly or not so quietly removed, and then there you have it. You can rebrand it as something else entirely. And even all of this stuff in there, neoliberals, and of course they don't mean by that capitalism and freedom. They don't mean Milton Friedman's redefinition of neoliberalism or that neoliberal politic. They were saying no, neoliberals are the new version of the liberals from back in the day, and all promoting their homosexuality and identity politics. So yeah, so it's perfect. And then of course they're all part of the this is all part of the oh my goodness. Yeah. Sort of all part of the reconquering of, the reconquest of America, according to NAM, after the Second World War, and a reconquering of space that has never been ceded. It's so All right. So from there, I just want to pick. I'm only going to play a very brief um uh segment from the recent discussion between OrisanmiBurton and Jared Ware, talking demystifying FrankKitson's low intensity operations video. And I'll put all the links in the new show description shortly after we wrap up here. But if you haven't seen it, it's just it's endless bars. It- um. Oh, wait a minute. Oh no, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, fine. All right, that's fine. That's fine. So I just want to play this one little bit, and it would be easy to sit here and just rewatch the whole thing, but we're not going to do that. Just watch this brief segment. Um, in my notes here, it is a master class on counterinsurgency. And we really do need to reconsider all discussion of media communication for one thing. That was one note I made about after watching this entire discussion here. But I just want to play this brief section that relates most specifically to stuff I'm actually trying to work on now, but to what is often my focus here, that overlap, particularly of media and everything else. So when they're talking about, at least in this section here, and I guess I should FrankKitson's low intensity operations book, and then they go into many other things. But that's what they're talking about in this part right here.
Into that, I mean, should we? I can talk. We can go there now if you want to.
There's a couple other. Let's move through a few things and then we'll get to that, because I think that's kind of going to be the bulk of it once we move past this next phase. So one thing that he says is that lots of low-grade intelligence is better than a little bit of high-grade intelligence. This was kind of interesting. He's like just advocating that, there's a lot of people at the time that want a few high-level informants, basically. And his argument is that it's better to have as much information as possible, even if a lot of it's not very good, because you can develop that information basically. And
so I think I rewound a little bit too
it's just
far.
Like an argument for the
net, like the ARPANET, and sort of like they're calling them data banks or whatever. All of these will be unreliable, but he's like, because he's plugged into this, right? So. And one of the things he does in Northern Ireland is start to use, he uses computers quite aggressively in Northern Ireland. And this is the moment when, this is the early prehistory of the internet, like the ARPANET, and sort of like they're calling them data banks or whatever. On page 142nd, he says, he's talking about all the equipment you need to defeat an armed, violent insurgency. And he says, in addition to the devices invented and designed for conventional war, which are also useful for fighting insurgents, there must be many others invented and designed for industry or commerce, which would also be useful if they could be identified and adapted to the purpose. No survey of the equipment which the Army needs in order to make it ready to fight insurgents would be complete without reference to these devices, and anything which would help in developing background information into contact information would be of particular interest. So contact, we talked a little bit about contact information, but that term is quite fascinating. One way of approaching the subject would be to imagine a tactical problem and then see whether technology might be able to help in solving it. For example, under present arrangements, a member of the intelligence organization called to interrogate a prisoner in a forward area would be most unlikely to make any headway until he could get the man back to his office, where he has the records of all the enemy groups in his area, together with the details about their arms, contacts, and other points of interest. He talked about this a lot in Gangs and Counter Gangs, around how he would, they would capture prisoners and interrogate them, but they wouldn't have enough information to ask the right questions, or they wouldn't have enough information to be able to catch the prisoner in a lie, which they could then use as leverage to flip them. So he's kind of reflecting on that experience of not having enough information to actually do that.
So again, I could watch the whole thing over again repeatedly, but I just wanted to grab that one part, in part because of something I'm working on right now, but also because of something that I just discovered that I mentioned a little bit Thursday at the People's Forum. But also because I've been going down this oh man, the YouTube algorithm got me, the counterinsurgency got me. If you watch that clip, or if someone associated with the YouTube street organization community would take that clip and infuse that into all these discussions about WAC 100 and Big U and all of these folks are going on No Jumper podcast. I mentioned it yesterday, but there's so much of it. They're going on this podcast, they're going on Vlad TV, and just they're on Clubhouse platforms, just, and then if you watch the rest of that video where they go more into the discussion of the counterinsurgency tactics used to create pseudo gangs, Ori and Jared are talking. They were talking. They as kids and them, like these pseudo gangs are putting on blackface, learning how to dap each other up, learn all the phrases that would be used, and setting people up. And if you watch that and go back to that silliness I was just talking about, that has captured me a little bit. I've been watching way more of that than I'd like to admit. It's eerie. It's even more eerie. Then if you start to think about it in terms of more politicized spaces, it becomes, and maybe that's why I was intentionally trying to keep it into areas I know nothing about, like in terms of street organization, because it just for my own. But please, everybody, if you haven't seen, of course, all of their stuff, but definitely watch that entire video and more. There's so much goodness in there. Which did lead me, and one of the things they end up talking about, actually, well, they can't do everything. And yeah, it shouldn't be so much fun for us to talk about these counter-revolutionary weirdos. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, the way I think of it is I am trying to have, I mean, I always want to have fun, and I have to feel like I'm compelled to, these are the things that are of interest to me. So then the combination is to try to have fun with this kind of, in the context of this kind of, stuff. But, I mean, yeah, anyway, it's woo. But yeah, that was the whole, but one of the other things, many other gems, was they made reference to the work of CarolineElkins, whose name I probably have come across or maybe have heard them talk about before. But I did, yeah, they did make those trailers, the left ruining the university trailers. Yeah, exactly. Well, gangs in Haiti operate like the mafia. My grandmother told me she can't go places without paying them for it. Yeah, that's a shame. I'm sorry to hear that. That's crazy. And then, yeah, 1-800-BLAME her, bro. Oh, boy. So, but this article was mentioned, and so Ori made the point during the discussion that CarolineElkins has done a lot of work on the MauMau and the British tactics to suppress the MauMau Kenyan Land of Freedom movement. But he mentioned also that she had published this article specifically about the archival work. And I did go grab it and read it, and it makes many powerful points. I just want to highlight a couple of things here. So it's called Looking Beyond MauMau, Archiving Violence in the Era of Decolonization. And you know what? I don't have good bibliography information right off the top for it. I know it was published sometime after 2005 because they make reference to 2005 in there, but I'll check the chat in a second. Maybe somebody already knows, but out the gate, when asked to reflect upon the era of British decolonization, the archives that documented, I'm drawn to images of ash and fragments and the ability to post-imperial landscapes and those who till them to conceal as much as they reveal. From India to Kenya, a dark cloud literally hung over Britain's imperial retreat. The smoke from burning documents threatened to interrupt Independence Day ceremonies and betray the hastened Anglo efforts to sanitize the past and lay claim to the future. And I made a note here. This is why I don't like museums. I see museums as doing exactly what Elkins is saying here about archives. The warehouse for Britain's end of empire files reflects and reinforces the contents of the documents themselves. From the carefully managed files, a sense emerges of a coherent decolonization process, and one that adhered to and imparted the rule of law, just as the colonial administrators and archivists in London adhered and still adhere to the rules of document preservation. In other words, as I understand it, that museums, much like archives, are curated political memories meant to frame a past and a present, all in service of that same imperial process. Archives are loaded sites that produce realities as much as they document them. And as she points out, a lot of what has been written about British Empire has largely been devoid of archival skepticism. This came up when we were doing the response to Marable's Malcolm X. That how much weight do you put on the archives of Black liberation compiled by the FBI? It was an imperial story, in Drayton's words, that allowed Britain to escape the scene of the crime. That's what the archives at Kew, the British National Archives, Kew Gardens. The power of the archive shaped the ways in which the future understood the British imperial past for decades. Indeed, of the official mind reflected that which the archives beckoned us not only to remember, but also to forget. And this is why I think, as I noted here, why we need not avoid pop cultural or academic criticism. Because I would argue that pop culture and pop academic productive work is itself part of what is being described here as the process of preserving colonial memories and versions of events, or the cover the escape, the scene of, as they escape the scene of the crime. The power of the archive shaped the ways in which the future understood British imperial past for decades. So when I'm complaining about, Peniel Joseph and whoever else, their impact on Netflix documentaries and Hulu, Disney products about Malcolm and whoever else are become part of this process. They become part of how the future understands these histories and struggles. She's talking about some survivors of the struggle in Kenya who wanted to get reparations. This article is fascinating. I'm not doing it justice. That she goes into how the archives helped, how challenging the archives. And she and a colleague doing a variety of different forms of research in books called Imperial Reckoning, which is hers, and History of the Hanged, which is her colleagues, help excavate a lot of the research that would help some of these folks get reparations to a certain extent. Not unlike other reparations cases, the juridification of the past put history on trial. As with other cases of restorative justice over the last several decades, rules of disclosure produced considerable new historical evidence. In this instance, legal discovery brought to light thousands of new end of empire documents that will drive a new era of research on British decolonization and compel the field to examine closely the ways in which British colonial archive is derivative and reflective of the colonial state itself, and as a means by which the state, both at the time of empire and thereafter, exercised its power and affirmed its fictions. Woof. In filing their case, the 5 elderly claimants from Kenya's rural highlands managed to stir the strategic amnesia of the British colonial government and its archives. Just a lot of talking about some of the files that were removed and what to think of the files that remained. That is, to what degree were abuse and destruction of life and property part of a calculated and systematic British counterinsurgency policy in Kenya, and to what degree were colonial officials in London acting in right of Britain implicated in these acts. It is here that the documents contained in the Hanslope disclosure shed important light onto not only the nature of the systematic violence at the end of empire, but also the degree to which the colonial state in London, including those not limited to the colonial office, has been complicit in the selective process of how the past has been documented and remembered. Oh man, and she talks about this guy who was involved in the colonial abuse of MauMau and Kenyan people, and then became part of the colonial office that helped develop the archives of that abuse. So it's this Gavagan dude was now rendering documents to ash and colonial incinerators while ensuring that others would be permanently held under lock and key. This was somebody who had developed one of these interrogation techniques that the dilution method, I think they called it, that basically abused people sometimes to death. And then he's also in charge of determining what would be remembered and how it would be remembered. The sensitivity culling that was so and again, I've done some research at the National Archives not far from here in Maryland, and this comes up, the sensitivity culling, like what you get is what is left after they've decided what should be left is available to you. Yeah, there's a lot here. This was a fascinating read. I encourage people to check this out. Also, there's always a lot of great stuff to check out. In what ways is the orchestration of systematic violence to personhood and documents connected to the morphing of individuals such as Terence Gavagan from chief torturer to decorated archivist? Empiricism, the lifeblood. So this is interesting. When the article ends, she's asking this question of American Historical Review, June 2015. My bad. There's the full citation. So 2015 American Historical Review. Empiricism. So she's talking about the field of history and its limitations in doing historical work. And I thought this was a really good part. This was a really nice self-reflection about the field she's in. But she says here, empiricism, the lifeblood of our profession, cannot resurrect which colonial incinerators have left to the historical imagination. Empiricism, the lifeblood of our profession, cannot resurrect that which colonial incinerators have left to the historical imagination. Critical theorists and anthropologists have long informed the recovery of histories in the face of colonial archives that shape their own versions of the past. recovering consciousness and memory, probing the classification and collection of colonial knowledge and the destabilizing colonial boundaries and control using the lens of mimicry, question colonial power and its structures while simultaneously critiquing them. And then citing some of her colleagues, she's asking about this question, what becomes of historiography when it's hitched directly to restorative justice? And as I interpret it, what does it mean then to be writing about these histories if there's a decidedly political connection to them? It can't be some apolitical, disconnected, it's not an apolitical, disconnected project anymore. It's part of a process that would be in many ways determine how the state is remembered and imagined, and to what extent it has to offer up restorative justice. But I like this question though, or this point raised here that's saying, look, we need an interdisciplinary approach. And I remember, when Fanon talked about I don't do disciplines; those are for botanists. But this question, who organized the colonial violence? As she ends the article with this. So that was a great read there, to connect to this discussion of the university and so on. So, all right, everybody, please do, as we shift here, close to an hour in. Welcome everybody who's all fully here. Apologies for the confused start. Please do like, share, subscribe, support the platform. Hope you're enjoying yourself. Please do avail yourself of all the links that will eventually show up in the show description to everything that I'm talking about. And feel free to put this in your socials and let folks know where we actually are. But at the same time, it's all downhill from here. We have hit a crescendo in terms of depth of thought, politics, and intellect, and from here on in, it's just going to get increasingly silly. So I just want to be fair to you. If you have more serious things to attend to, or if you don't want to be bogged down with the silliness, it's no harm, no foul. You could jump off right now and go check out the Millennials and Killing Capitalism episode I was talking about, or any other of them for that matter. Or hop on back over to Black Liberation Media and check anything you've missed over there as well, because it's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better. Good Lord, it's not going to get any better. So don't say I didn't warn you, and don't say I didn't at least try to start off with something. But you know what? Before I leave, though, I am going to bring it back to something else, because there was another thing that I mentioned it. I'm going to talk about. So we might climb back up towards the end at least a little bit, but. All right, so let's start with this thing here, and it's not even that much, because I don't think I could watch much more than this. But this was sent to me from the page, I guess, Baratunde. VanJones joins me on Life with Machines to talk about his work with the Dream Machine Innovation Lab and AI. So I did not get into all. I'm not, but this is the clip that was going around that was sent to me. AI is reparations.
Is the closest thing to reparations Black people are gonna get.
Yes.
VanJones, defend that statement, sir.
Well, first of all, we ain't getting nothing. You probably are not going to get a check. That's probably not going to happen. What's the next best thing? A fair shot. AI puts us at even Steven. You may not have gone to the fanciest school in the world, but right now you can have ChatGPT on your phone and you don't even have to be able to write. You can literally just push the button and start talking, asking questions for free. There are tools that will have you functioning at the level of somebody who did get the 4 years of college. I'm not saying it's going to happen in 1,000 years. I'm saying that's today, right now.
Right now.
That's as close as we're going to get to reparation.
So look, dude has been wrong for a long time. The eco-capitalism thing he was doing 20 years ago, I mean, just for a long time. And just coffee. I got nothing special. Although I should. But so I said, okay, I watched that clip and I said, so it's not that I thought it was taken out of context, but I said, let me try to at least watch a little bit of where that was coming from. And I'll show you exactly how far I got. And then I'm going to stop there. And maybe if we have some time, we can come back to it if you all want to. But I said, let me just see, like, what, I don't know why. I don't know, curiosity maybe. And so I went and found the episode that they were talking about where this was coming from, and thought I would try to check it out and have a little fun. But obviously there's so much wrong with what he said. As I argued last week off of Dr. Fatima's video, the technology doesn't change social relationships. It doesn't. It's not automatically going to do that. That her point was, and I agree, that the sort of the king science guy Einstein was saying, we need socialism. The technologies that, so the idea that we're not going to get reparations, why? Because you got 100 million from Bezos. Why isn't anybody else going to get reparations? Because you and others with big platforms aren't going to advocate for it, or you're not going to connect it to more radical movements, or you're not going to try to build movements that would create situations where maybe reparations would be a moot topic, given the redistribution that we could create. I mean, you're not going to, so that's it. And we should just say AI, because you could go to ChatGPT and fake like you went to a university. That is a bizarre. So I said, let me try. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'll show you exactly how far I got. I went and found the Could AI Be Reparations episode of the podcast.
Preacher.
Yes.
Professor V.
I like setting up these episodes in a real place in the real world. So I'm really coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia, the closest thing the United States has to Wakanda. And that's perfect because
that was it. I'm sorry, I think I cut it a little short, because he does finish and say, my next guest wants to make Wakanda real. And that was it. That was all I could do. And obviously, I mean, well, I don't know. I have so many problems with the whole Wakanda thing. I'm anti-Wakanda. I'm hostile to Wakandans. If a Wakandan popped up right now, if T'Challa popped up right now, my joke is I might even swing on him. Like, how dare you? And my point is, this is how I see it being connected here. The black bourgeoisie, the black capitalist fantasy is Wakanda. An isolated, protected, disengaged blacktopia where no discussions of class nobody has to talk about how anything's going to be. We don't have to question the existence of a monarchy. We definitely don't have to do soda and Pan-Africanism. We don't need a United States of Africa. We just need a hidden, protected. And then when we get found out, we'll just give our technology over to the CIA. But then the idea that you want to make Wakanda real is, again, part of, why would you want Wakanda to be real? And then this fantasy that Atlanta, I mean, come on, man. I honestly couldn't even get. And then, because there was like this deluge of, so I was saying wrong from the start. This is a false premise. the previous flaw would be built on. That's why you could come out with this idea that AI is reparations, because you want Wakanda and you think you can make it in Atlanta. Damn everybody else. So if you're not in Atlanta, if you can't get into Wakanda, my bad. You know, you just don't get the freedom. What kind of bullshit is this? Exactly. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Congo, Haiti, Sudan, they need liberation. But nah, never mind that. We gonna make Wakanda in Atlanta. Oh my goodness. So why isn't VanJones so would that be his solution too, by the way, to just tell Traore and everybody in the Sahel, you're good. Just AI your way to liberation. You don't have to do all this other stuff. Just AI it. Chat GPT. And do you all remember when I should have found that clip. You all remember when we looked at there was the group of sisters who were talking about BuyingPower, and they did the Chat GPT for what BuyingPower, something like that, and got everything wrong. It was what was she? It was something like that. It was so wild. And they were like, here are the experts. And she's literally on there. Oh, let me just Chat GPT it. And it was wrong. Because again, AI is not some autonomous genius that disconnected from the lunatics who are running this place. All right, so okay. So if we have time and anybody really wants to, maybe, but I don't know if we're gonna have time tonight for that. But all right, let me just get to a couple of other things here. Then nope. Because there's so much. I almost can't even keep up with the BuyingPower nonsense. And especially now that the boycotts are popping off. So this one, so we could just run through some of this here, some of these. So according to Newsbreak, Kristen Brady, some Black customers never returning to retail chains that drop DEI from yesterday. A new president in the White House and protests from conservatives who describe diversity initiatives as immoral and illegal cleared the way for private companies to completely abandon and roll back DEI commitments. Companies which include McDonald's, Walmart, Amazon, and Target announced preparations to cut and scale back diversity. So when I read this, I thought again of Ori's discussion of the liberal counterinsurgency in response being itself attacked by Trump's attacks on DEI, which is itself liberal counterinsurgency. And this issue of McDonald's, because remember, we've been talking more about lately, McDonald's was itself almost forcibly connected to Black communities as a counterinsurgent effort against Black liberation struggles by having Ray Kroc literally invited to Nixon's White House to be told, yo, get some Black people to own some McDonald's in Black neighborhoods. Put some Black people in your commercials. So now McDonald's is apparently rolling it back, and although later they have some other rebranded version of what they're calling it, apparently, so telling people not to be upset. But as this article says here, Black people in America have a collective 1.3 trillion in annual buying power, according to UGA Today. By the way, I'm going to just save us some time, but feel free when I put all these links in the show description to check it out. UGA Today is the Selling Center. Click. Selling Center, the same report that I've been talking about for a minute now. So again, it's it's the same. And then they referred to a couple of economists in here who basically say that boycotts for them to have a significant impact, they need to be sustained and to reach way beyond Black consumers. And I definitely wanted to just say, I told you so. I had that, called that, been saying that even in this, more liberal conservative, or whatever version, relative to us version of it, they're saying the same thing. you can't boycott your way to anything. Actually, because it said here, oh, I missed this part. The overall spending power of consumers in the U.S. is over 17 trillion, according to Vicky Bogan, Duke University's professor of public policy. I did try to quickly look her up to see where her work overlaps with what I'm trying to look at, and I didn't see anything in her CV specific to buying power, consumerism, spending power, anything like that. So I'm not entirely sure how she frames this or where she, but anyway, but my point was that even where it said that black people are supposed to have 1.3 trillion, to the point I've been making for years now, relative to the entire economy, it's 17 trillion for everybody. So even if this buying power is real and understood, even if it's real, if it's understood properly, it's still irrelevant or relatively relevant based on the fact that 17 trillion, according, which is why I think they arrive at a similar conclusion, different from a different pathway than I do, that she and the other economists referenced in this story would say that, boycotts don't really, they're not going to have much of an impact. Because the black community relative to the rest of the spending community isn't that big. According to data from Bloomberg's second measure, a February 28 grassroots economic blackout had no discernible impact on overall United States consumer spending or spending money at major retail chains. Logan said, even with limited impact, the one-day boycott was enough to raise awareness for the cause. So awareness was raised, didn't really have an impact economically. And you can see here why, because even if you accept the 1.3 trillion number as real, it's more than masked and balanced out by the 17 trillion of the rest of the country. So maybe I will look more into to Professor Bogan's work, but to see where exactly she's, because they don't link to anything. There's no citation for that claim. So, all right. Now let's so some more. Now this part is not. I don't think this part is nonsense, though. I did not watch the whole video. Once I saw what it was, I thought we could watch it here, together. But in advance, I don't want to say that this is part of the nonsense that I'm getting to with buying power. And there's more, but I'm just sort of going in order. I don't think I really had a particular order here, but this one I do know I don't want to put into the nonsense category prematurely, at least. But it says here, but I know enough to know that I'm mentioned here. So, obviously say my name. I want to see what's up. Do black communities have the economic power to assert change? Myth of black buying power on RonkeLawalMeans. I will, of course, have the link to this in the show description, but let's.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is
Ronke. Put it on 1.5 speed. Because it is a 17-minute video, so I don't know. But let me just see if it becomes too much of a problem for you as you watch.
Well, I wanted to talk about something. It's going to be a bit controversial, I think, but I want you to watch and listen to this. Well, watch the video, but listen to what I'm going to talk about with an open mind, and also do your own reading, because I'm still digesting, and I think it's really important to be able to read, analyze, dissect, and discuss. I read a book recently which shifted something in me, and I've been having some thoughts over the past few years, but when I read this book, something clicked. I'm still working on my thoughts about it.
Oh, word.
So this isn't necessarily a review, but it is a presentation of the information from the UK Black British perspective. And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts as you watch the video, but just read the book so you can find it online. This is a book called The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power. So again, I tell you, it's going to be a bit controversial, and I think Professor
wait.
Gerard A. Ball's book has caused some ruptures, right? I am not going to say, that I believe that Professor Ball is 100% right, but I will say what he has shared in this book is pretty strong evidence, or at least pretty strong when we're looking at black spending power and economic thought and collective spending power. I think I can't dispute that what Professor Ball has done is important work here. I'm not going to dispute that. So wherever you are on the political spectrum, I think it's really important to undertake critical thinking. Now, this book is based on the US and Black American spending power. So I've tried as much as possible to take it from look at it from the Black British perspective, knowing that we are a much smaller community and our shared history is different. Shared African and Caribbean diaspora and community history is different, but there are some relevant points made within Professor Ball's book. I'm going to try and break down initially.
Yes, so off the top, thank you. I want to thank her off the top. Actually, you know what? Unless this goes wildly left, so to speak, and becomes something crazy, I don't care what she says after this. I mean, that's not entirely true. What I mean by that is any point of view that she has is going to be dope just for having taken the time to give it this level of consideration and thought and try to apply it to her situation over there. I would love to see if there's expand the work to the situation in the diaspora. Absolutely. Soda all day. So, okay. All right. That's what's up. Let's keep going.
The points that are being made. Then I'm going to share my perspectives. And then I'm going to leave it to you. Critical thinking. I'm a fan of critical thinking, okay? So this is not me saying this is how you should think. No, but I want you to take stock and have a moment. So the book, it examines the widely held belief that Black communities possess enough economic power and influence through their purchasing power to really disrupt and change things in political and economic terms. Now, when we talk about things, we're talking about the real drivers of economic growth. Like, I'm talking about, when I think of this, I'm thinking of, I
hope so.
Really influencing policy, like reform, really. Like, if we're talking about economic power, so I'm getting excited. So maybe, let me breathe. When we're talking about economic power, we cannot just say economic power is good because it's made a few of us rich. So when we're talking about buying power, we cannot say, yes, let's get all of us to spend our money with this Black entrepreneur only. So because it means that it's going to cause a shift in our community in a way that's going to improve our community's situational circumstance, right? So housing, education, right? Healthcare. Is spending our money in that direction, is there enough? Do we have enough money economically in our communities, in the UK, in America, to radically make an impact in those key areas? So I'm not talking about just making more Black billionaires or millionaires, which is, look, if that's what you're into, representation and all of that, fine. But I'm talking about long-term sociological and economical impact that is going to improve the situation, the livelihoods of our communities as a whole.
Yes.
I hope I'm making sense. So here are some takeaways, right? First takeaway is that Ball argues the notion of Black buying power, again, this Black American buying power, is misleading and does not equate to actual economic strength. He states the studies from which most national discussion of buying power come from are to be credited for being are not clear, and they do not in any way relate to what most think is genuine economic strength. So basically, reports that have been used to talk about buying power are misleading. They're inaccurate. And the one thing I like about this book, Professor Ball does not let go of asking for facts. And this I like because, look, you cannot change a fact. A fact is a fact. No matter, we might live in a world of misinformation, we might live in a world of social media, but a fact is a fact. Like, this is why if we look at what science and technology is supposed to do, which is not just necessarily just to make more millionaires and billionaires, it's supposed to use fact-based information for the betterment and empowerment of us all. Right? Fact. So what I love about Professor Ball is Professor Ball finds these reports and is like, no, this is misleading. Because in truth, there's not enough of us, so from a Black American perspective, and yeah, if you look at it from the Black British perspective, to really have that economic strength and power that people keep talking about. Okay, number two is another one. It's a propaganda tool. The concept functions as propaganda, diverting attention from systematic economic inequalities. So it works with denying the reality of structural, intentional, and necessary economic inequality required to maintain society. So basically, it's used to distract from the very things I've spoken about earlier: housing, healthcare, education, employment. If we can all get excited and say, oh yes, spend black, it's great, the Black pound, fantastic. But then if year on year, statistics are showing us, facts are showing us that we continually are housed in poorer housing, we're offered worse healthcare, offered worse education, unless we can afford better education, so private education. Continuously, there's issues, systematic, structural, societal issues that are negatively impacting us. But then our only solution seems to be, let's just keep spending money. That doesn't quite make sense. Or only spend money in the Black community. Again, this is where I'm saying, well, I still think it's important to spend within, amongst ourselves, I do. But because we don't have enough of an economic foundation, even when we're spending amongst ourselves. So for instance, unless we own the land of a shop, so we're going to a black-owned shop, but unless that black-owned shop is the land that the shop is owned, like the person who owns the land is also black, the money is going out anyway. It's going out of our community anyway, because the rent that the shop owner is paying is going out of the community. Does that make sense? Now, please, again, this is just something to think about.
Listen, this is all I'm saying. Look, she may in fact be a genius. I don't know. My point though is that if the fact that she's starting with, I'm worried about the collective, once you start there, everything else really does start to fall apart pretty quickly. So I'm beyond thrilled that she's making use of my book, but and not to be, whatever, but it does. I'm not making some argument that is that difficult to understand. It's getting past that initial concern over my individual so-called success versus the community. And she starts with the community, and then therefore everything starts to make much more sense. And then, yes, she read the book. I mean, so all I got when I got sent this, all I got was some sort of message conveying, or whatever was sent. However I got this, it was conveyed to me that that she's using my book or makes reference to me or something, and that there was no like warning, like, she's going at you or anything crazy. So I but I didn't know she was doing all of this. This is. But that's my point, though. That's really the point. She read the book, and then, you know what I mean? It's and she started with, I'm concerned about the collective, and therefore that makes everything, And who was it that was offering? Why would Stephen? Why would I need security, man? Why would I need security? But I appreciate it, and shout out to Bouncing on U Street. Shout out to the U Street corridor, Black Broadway as it used to be. Oh my goodness.
Apply critical thinking. We're talking here. I'm not trying to say X, Y, Z, this is wrong or right, but I am trying to say, yeah, like, is there enough economic, we don't. Like, when I'm reading this, I'm thinking, oh yeah, it could be propaganda. Like, it is a distraction. The way we get so excited, for example, when it comes to representation, seeing black billionaires, even here, black millionaires, and then we scratch the surface and we see some of the activities some of those millionaires and billionaires undertake. They're not always for the great good of our community. So then it's like, yeah, what is the purpose of this? Another thing that was really...
Remember when Diddy was doing the BuyingPower stuff for Revolt TV?
The word for me, Professor Ball really did, is a misplaced blame scenario, right? So the myth, this kind of idea that black buying power is so strong, perpetuates a false narrative that black communities are responsible for their own economic challenges due to poor financial decisions, rather than acknowledging systematic barriers. And that was it for me. This part, out of everything else, was when I was like, because we can intentionally spend all our money in certain spaces only. Does that solve and resolve the systematic issues that are taking place in our communities? No, actually no. We're still faced with them. So even when we do all of that, we do the right thing. Buy black, only shop with where possible. Because it's not, in a country like the UK, you cannot do 100% of your shopping in a black-owned supermarket, for example. That I know, like, you can do a lot. And again, remembering, this is where you've got to really think about, like, financially, if statistically, the majority of our communities, African Caribbean communities, are working class, sometimes you have to think about where you're shopping in order to make your pounds sterling go further. And it's just not possible to be able to shop 100% in black-owned businesses. But also beyond that, beyond just shopping in black-owned businesses, this kind of idea that how we're spending our money is the reason why we're struggling. What? As I'm filming this now, it's 2025, we should know that it's not because we decided to buy a TV from this shop or our food from that shop that our communities are crumbling. There are systematic and structural issues that need to be addressed. But unfortunately, these kind of conversations, they do end up blaming the black community or black communities.
Exactly.
First of all, also this is a marketing strategy. So, Black Buying Power is using a marketing strategy to target black consumers. So this is why, again, this is where it's going to get contentious. This is why even in the advertising space, right, where suddenly we're getting a lot of representation in advertising, it's just a way of encouraging more black consumers to spend money, obviously outside of necessarily black communities. But yeah, obviously, like, letting black people know that they have a huge amount of buying power. And then we have, it's not, Professor Ball and me, we're not saying that we do not have influence at all, but it's this kind of substantial influence that can address the disparities, like serious structural disparities, that we don't necessarily have that. In a country like the UK, we make up, I want to say it's like 3.54% of the population. Could just definitely under 5% of the entire population of this country is black communities, African and Caribbean. And so it's just not really feasible to consider. Yes, we can be disruptive.
Oh, is she using volume 1?
And we can influence for sure, but we've got to recognize that some of it may well be a marketing strategy. And yeah, finally, the global relevance, which is why it makes it relevant to us, is a lot of the themes of economic misrepresentation and systematic inequality resonate with black communities across the globe, especially the UK. And it's really important to understand these dynamics. So by critically examining this myth of black buying power, it gives us a deeper understanding of economic challenges and inequalities. And I really, when you think about it, look, even when things go really, really well in the black business community, take the time to look at the relationships, look at partnerships. A lot of black businesses can't survive wholly, 100% on ourselves, on black communities. We are tied to, in this country, the majority, right? So, and it's the same in America. There is nowhere in Europe, in the UK, where a black business person can survive without the majority. Even if, I know there's some schools of thought to say we should be describing ourselves as a global majority, we are the global majority. So unless we go, we look at African nations, we look at that, fine, but we're talking about people who are here, rooted here, planted here, have homes here, and we see that it's just, not possible. And we're talking about it not being possible at the moment to really see black spending power as a significant enough tool to radically shift societal issues in a way that it needs to, okay? There can be some disruptions. Our voices and our influence, we talk about, even, social media has given us a voice, that's fantastic. We've always had a voice, don't get me wrong, but I just want us to critically assess and analyse whether we're being honest about black spending power, the black pound, black buying power, like what does it actually mean critically engage that? Because I think it has been used as this tool of community empowerment. It's been used as it's been labelled as something radical when actually it's not radical. It's been labelled as almost revolutionary, and it's absolutely not revolutionary. It is important, but we need to now do the work to address, okay, what does black spending power look like realistically? And what are the challenges that we need to address in our communities? And marry the two and really assess what needs to be done beyond the glittery outlook of, black excellence and success as we know it. What is meaningful change? What does meaningful change look like when we talk about black spending power, black economic power, black economic strength and growth, particularly in the UK? I'm talking from the UK, but obviously Professor Ball's work is based in America. But yeah, really interesting body of work. Really want you to, if you can, find it, read it. Again, watch this with an open mind. Share insights, not insults. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.
Yes. Please do. As I have now done, like and subscribe. And I am literally, as we speak, sending her a comment and a note. Please contact me if you are ever interested in building further. mixwhatilike@gmail.com. Yeah, that was very dope. And again, it's not that deep. If folks, if you're concerned about the collective and you read the work, it might be fruitful. Who knew? That was very cool. YouTube academia. Debate your detractors. I'll pay for a Malvo Jared fight. I would debate anyone who has said and acknowledged that they've read the book. That's all I ask. Read the book. And if there's a debate to be had, let's have it. It's not a problem. Oh, man. So that was very dope. Very, very, very dope. I knew what? or who knew? Maybe you're not talking to me. Sorry. Maybe. That was very dope. That was very dope. So let's see what happens from that. That would be great if we could link up. But I just appreciate that she did that. So salute. Nice on. All right. Let's keep going. You know what? You know what? Because there's a little bit of a time issue. I'm going to skip to something that kind of just came up for me on the train up to New York the other day. Oh, wow. Thank you for the super chat. I'm a layman and I get the point of the book. So what's everybody's problem, Dr. Ball? Well, first of all, William, thank you for the super chat and thank you for joining us this fine evening. So some of it I have to speculate because I'm not entirely sure, but I will say again, as far as I'm aware, none of the public criticism of the book that I've seen comes from anyone who has actually read the book. And those who say that they've read the book and have criticism don't have any evidence of it. They seem to show no evidence of having read the book. But the criticism is usually centered around, I don't have enough of a solution, which isn't really true. They just don't like the one I offer, or that I am disparaging Black business and entrepreneurialism at all and or I'm saying something to the effect that we have no hope, so let's give up and quit. None of which is true. But it's somewhere in there that people have a problem with the book. If there are other problems that people have, I'm not aware, and I would just encourage them to read the book and then share their thoughts. But that's usually what it is. There is some willful ignorance, but I think it's so. In fact, included in the book is reference to at least some research that suggests that people, if their core ideological beliefs are being challenged, will struggle even in the face of fact that they agree with to change their views. So I think that could be part of it as well, that the argument is itself an ideological challenge to those who believe in capitalism, who believe that success is defined by individual material advance, et cetera, and so forth. And I think that there is some visceral reaction to being invited to something more radical and more collective in their you know. I need to just sit with that. Sit with the compliment. Is that what you're saying? I don't know. What am I sitting with? My bad. But I appreciate it. I appreciate, So that's the short answer. But all right, but I'm gonna hold off on some of the more some of this other silly stuff because time has kind of moved faster than I thought, but there's something I did really want to get to tonight that I read on the way. I don't know how so sometimes, like if there's a movie on or a game on or whatever, or something's just on, what I like to do is, or if I just want to distract myself, I like to maybe not always I don't always read everything, but I like to search stuff. So I like, or just look at stuff. So I'll go to research databases, or I'll go to academia.edu, or I'll just Google sometimes and just put in, something I'm interested in looking up and see, And one of the articles that came up in one of my searches was the one I want to share with you here that is in many ways somewhat of a new approach for me and was just a fascinating read. It's a very well-written article. It's great. I'm not going to share it because I'm not going to get in any trouble with all of that, but I will at least let you know. I'm not going to put a link to it, but I'll at least, share the citation so you can find it. The article is Mass Media and the Colonial Informant, Messaoud Jabari and the French Empire, 1880 to 1901, by Arthur Asaroff, in Past and Present, Volume 254, Issue 1, February 2022. I loved this article, and I'm going to make a lot of use of it. I'll just read the opening paragraph and then go through some of the highlights, and then encourage. On 20 September 1895, a large crowd filed into Grand Hotel in Paris, just opposite of the Opera, to hear a talk by an Algerian man. Messaoud Jabari, born near Bonn, and forgive me for all the mispronunciations, on the Mediterranean, held their attention with stories about his recent expedition to West Africa. Returning from Dahomey in Nigeria, he claimed to have found the survivors of the Flatters mission, a French expedition that had been massacred in the Sahara in 1881. The Parisian public were thrilled with the possibility that members of the mission might still be alive in darkest Africa over 10 years later. His spectacular yet unverifiable claims confused the public and experts, and the reunion in Paris ended in disarray. Prominent men formed a committee to investigate his assertions. The next day, reports of this meeting splashed the pages of most Parisian newspapers. This was a subject that captivates the entire press. What this article ends up talking about is the way that colonialism created a situation, among many others, obviously, where a colonized Algerian North African could find his way through his own skill set and interests to become a colonial intermediary, the colonial informant. Jabari was accomplished in the art of generating information that was both plausible yet unverifiable. That he came into adulthood at a time where a new mass media, in terms of a printed press, was just evolving, where the Western European powers were further expanding into the continent of Africa, and on their way to the so-called Berlin Conference and the scramble for Africa, the great cake to be carved up. And I think he points to a role that continues to be played to this day, where particularly in commercial, well-platformed and supported, even state-sponsored media, members of the colonized community are invited to play the go-between. I think it happens in pop culture. I think it happens in politics. I think it happens even in terms of the self-snitching going on in podcasts, getting members of street organizations caught up in all kinds of cases. And this is not to say that these are innocent people that should be happily running the streets, but it's the mediated spaces that they're entering, often controlled by the settler colonial community, where they're performing this informant duty that we read about in this article, where the preferred narratives coming out of the colonized spaces that elite whites can't engage is sort of concretized. I don't know. It's fascinating. So, okay, as a North African Muslim colonial subject, Jabari could not hope to gain attention in his own right. However, he could portray himself as a conduit between a European audience and the worlds that they had no access to, especially sub-Saharan Africans who were further below him in the imagined racial order. Thus, to gain attention, Jabari portrayed himself as a mere intermediary. He consistently passed off his own opinions and fictions as somebody else's information. This article analyzes the art of making yourself into a conduit in the modern information system. Oh. The simultaneous expansions of colonialism and mass media generated an environment where information had to appear depersonalized to be taken seriously, and yet where only certain individuals could have access to particular kinds of knowledge. This encouraged a practice of passing off one's own fictions as somebody else's information, especially for colonized subjects like Jabari. The 19th century saw the emergence of an integrated transcontinental news system based on the electric telegraph dominated by Europeans and North Americans. Information flows became faster, more technologically complex, and more concentrated in the hands of the few who had huge power to broadcast to many. Does that sound familiar? Because all that has happened since is an increase in the sophistication of that technology, and this exact problem is worse today. And please don't be confused as we read through this when they're talking about how, yes, in the 19th century, white Parisians could not so easily click something and find out what was actually happening in Senegal. But please don't think that by today's world existing in with this internet, that I don't think I did enough service. You know what? Did I show the right clip, or did I show the clip properly when I showed the millennials are killing capitalism clip earlier? Because one of the points I was trying to make was that that they were showing was that the internet was born out of ARPANET, military technology, and used by the military strategists of the day, as is today, as a method of counterinsurgency. So the idea that simply because we live in an advanced technological media environment that this problem being identified right here wouldn't exist is pure fantasy, because the images that people have of so-called foreign lands, even in this highly digitized environment, is still itself manicured by and with dominant narratives imposed by an even more concentrated, powerful, and wealthy ownership of people with of media that has even more penetrative capacity than at the time being described here. So yes, people could theoretically see more of the so-called foreign world or global South than they could at the time of the 19th century, but that does not mean that they're getting an accurate version, and it does not mean that it's not being mediated in many of the same kinds of ways through performance and false projection of the colonial experience from those who appear to be from the colonized themselves. Jabari was an interpreter for the French army in North Africa who ended up producing unreliable information and generating huge problems for the authorities. In the 19th century, European powers tried to rule new colonial empires relying on a small number of administrators stretched thinly across Africa and Asia. To do so, they relied on informants who frequently gamed the intelligence system to their own advantage. Obviously not enough to free themselves, but much like what we see today, colonial informants can definitely individually benefit by creating distorted messages that might even at times confuse authorities. But as is the case here, without it even being said, obviously British colonialism was not brought down by this, but it's that British colonialism in this case, or colonialism in general, created the informant that even at times does give misinformation to their own personal benefit, but certainly not in any meaningful way that upsets the overall imperial process. To put it differently, what does one do with the rogue Algerian interpreter dominating the pages of the Parisian press in the middle of the Dreyfus Affair? Dreyfus Affair was, of course, one of the famous incidents where a Jewish military, I think, officer was because of being a Jew, was punished by French authorities and blamed for something he did not do. Punished, I think, in a prison camp for 5 or 6 years, something like that. But anyway, this requires analyzing colonialism as a truly global phenomenon that was not restricted to colonial territories. Rather than a face-to-face between the metropole and the colony, Jabari's trajectory sketches a triangle between the Maghreb, Europe, and West Africa. Informants defined by their ability to portray themselves as conduits to valuable information inaccessible to Europeans. So again, I'm even thinking of it in terms of this trifling stuff happening with all these street organizations. They go on these, and even the clip that maybe we'll even get to that I wanted to show where you know, a desire by segments of the white community to have proximity to the colonized creates this desire for the colonial informant to emerge. Tell us the stories, oh gangster. Oh, tell us the story of your black world. And then, yeah, if you make up a couple things, embellish a couple things, give a whoop, 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 give a couple stories that they want to hear, whoop, 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 you might make a couple dollars. You might even, get your op locked up. Oh boy, oh boy, boy. Oh, this was a fascinating. This article is really fascinating. And one of the points that it does raise is that Jabari was apparently, well, maybe we'll get to it in a minute. Jabari was an avid reader of newspapers written by and for a European audience. As a native, he could only be a reader of these newspapers and not legitimately participate in their world of political debates for citizen journalists. His political activity had to be indirect, capturing the attention of Frenchmen in power by offering them information on the activities of others. This practice would lead him to get involved in the affairs beyond his native Algeria, well beyond his native Algeria. So it does talk about Jabari, like with many of us, there's a desire for attention, for recognition, for to improve the station that is imposed upon us, and many will find ways to at least appear to give those in power what they want to get some sort of advance from it. And if you can't participate legitimately, you can't sit down at the table, you can't get it to the press, in the same way, you come up with these alternatives. Jabari was not a nationalist and he did not advocate for Algerian independence, but he was a passionate advocate for equality. So they talk about that he would find ways to get things published in the local press that talked about why were the French not applying to the Algerians the same level of democracy and freedom and equality that they claimed, that they said that they had for themselves. So it was like that sort of what we see nowadays. It's like, I'm not opposed to you. I'm not anti-colonial. I just want you to be the democracy you said you would be. Feeding off of colonial fears, Jabari concocted the exact dish the authorities were expecting, a conspiracy of almost all the notables of Eastern Algeria with Tunisian authorities and worse with Italians. That's the other thing. It gets into some interesting bits of history in terms of the relationship between the French and the Italians and competing colonialisms and the way French colonialism was trying to manage itself in one part of its empire versus another, and Jabari playing off of that to get himself into certain spaces to be heard. By emphasizing his position as an Algerian Muslim, Jabari was able to play a significant role in the scramble for Africa. This was a fascinating part of the article too. French expansion in West Africa offered opportunities to escape the stifling restrictions of settler rule in North Africa, in which they could hope to ascend the racial hierarchy by becoming white agents of the French Empire among the uncivilized blacks. So he said, hey, I'm a Muslim. I'm an Arab. I'm an Algerian. I'm with the French. I'm not with these black folks. And he went along with the French expedition into conquering Africa. Recent scholarship has begun to recognize that North Africans played important roles in the scramble for Africa, which was not just a process of European expansion. As Mustafa Minawi points out, area studies logics have often obscured the important contemporary links in the turn of the 20th century between the Middle East and Africa, so-called. Yeah, it's interesting. Jabari positioned himself as a white explorer, describing the Yoruba as very savage and in dire need of missionary attention, for the instrument of civilization par excellence is religion. While Islamic notions of race had their own distinctive history, in this case, they could agree with the European views that sub-Saharan black populations were savage and should be brought into progress by monotheistic religion. again, I know I know, it's often preferred we ignore it, but of course this was the case. And of course, the 19th century, the 1800s, was a good 1,000 years after Arabs and Islam spread engaged the African continent. And I stood in I visited in East Africa, one of those slave cave pits where Islam was interacting with Africans. So yeah, of course there was a racial hierarchy in that world. The Zanj Rebellion didn't happen because Africans were having a great time. Anyway, but portraying himself as Jabari. Anyway, I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna leave what happens to Jabari for those who find and read this article. The point I wanted to make with it was already made there, that the process of colonization creates, among many other things, this role of the colonial informant. And I think many of us are invited to that role on a regular basis to provide a version of the experience of the colonized that is appeasing to the white settler ruling elite. And it could even come with some nice paychecks. But going back to the previous sister, whose name I will learn and get correct eventually, if you have an initial concern for the collective, it's going to mess up some of those plans. Oh, what should we do? You know what? I'm gonna have to save some of this other stuff. So again, spring break's almost over, and my oldest is in town, and we have a family movie thing happening, and I don't, I'm not gonna. Who knows? I think this, I said this last week. I don't know how long this is gonna last, but I got to take advantage of it. So more to come. Monday morning on Black Liberation Media, we're going to have a very special continuation of our 100 years of Malcolm X. So please check that out. And are there any other, I got a couple minutes, any comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony, anything? I did leave some things on the table here. There's some buying power. There was more buying power nonsense, but things took a little longer than I thought. And I just really was enjoying that one. It was nice to I don't know why. Why would I have so many haters? For what? It's a shame. Dr. Ball tried to recommend your book on a video called How Generational Wealth for Black Families is a Scam on YouTube channel Mind Body Melani. And my comment kept getting deleted by YouTube. Are you sure it was by YouTube? The myth and propaganda of Mama's Biscuits being the greatest funk band in Western Maryland from 97 to 99. Yeah. Hey, you don't know that it's not true. Oh man, what are we watching? It is. I'm not proud. It's one of the latest murder mystery series. Hey, I appreciate the super chat, Comrade Trav. Good to see you. How you been? Hope all is relatively well. Capitalist cartoons, try Fox News. Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Peace, James. Peace. Yes, have VanJones read your book and come on to discuss. So again, I know some of these are jokes, but just to be clear, just to clarify, not everybody I invite accepts the invitation. Just to be clear, not so it's not that, and then sometimes I'm not, I don't, I do invite slightly less these days, but yeah. That was, yeah. AJ, thanks for the super chat. Appreciate you. But But yeah, if VanJones would read the book and wants to discuss it here or anywhere else, that'd be great. That'd of course be great. Who wouldn't who wouldn't want that? Who wouldn't want that? Definitely, 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 definitely. No, it's not the trial of Karen Reed. It's I forgot the name of it, but it's the Shonda Rhimes joint. With the sister from Orange is the New Black as the lead detective. So we're gonna see if we can run through that. Yeah. I am very happy when someone reads. Listen, I'm not gonna lie. Any positive contribution I can make to anybody doing good work and thinking is great. It feels great. And that's the point of the book. So I hope that this was considered moving BLM to be so that it could be remonetized. And the collective thought it not necessary at the time, and we'll see if it ever comes back up. But shout out to those reforming the collective. I mean, it's a lot of work, and there are those who have stepped up to do it, and I am all for it, and think it's great. So there's still more to come over there, I'm sure. But so yeah, yeah. So please do, if you are able to, please support the Patreon over there. There's I mean, it was always, despite some misrepresentation, it was always a collective, collaborative, redistributive model, but it's becoming even more so. And folks are building, so it's working in collectives where people are not funded and doing things in addition to all of their other jobs and lives is sometimes requires a patience that we're not always accustomed to, but things are happening, and I think it's great. But yeah, so please, I'm going to put the links to everything I can, and I'll put the citation to that Colonial Informant article in there in full. And who knows? I mean, maybe, I don't know. There might be, I got so many of these little silly buying power things here. So I'll probably be putting out something regarding that, later. But yeah, we didn't get to the full silliness, but I did want. I just couldn't. I couldn't forget. I hope you enjoyed some discussion of that Colonial Informant piece. I thought that article was fascinating. Fascinating. But definitely, I appreciate all of you for coming through. To those who will see this later, thanks to you as well. Nothing has happened to it. I assume that Josh is doing a lot with Black Men Build, and so I don't know if maybe we're waiting until after this Malcolm series wraps up, but there'll be. I expect there will be more with that. Yeah. Cats are busy. Folks are doing stuff. It's a lot of work to be done. Folks are out there doing stuff. Is it? I think I tried to watch this. I didn't get there though. Maybe I'll check it again since you recommended this. But listen, everybody, thank you very much. Please, whatever you can do to support the platform, go ahead and do that, and leave a comment with any of your thoughts after this. And yeah, definitely thank you all for coming through. This has been a lot of fun. A little Saturday night live, despite the rough start. And definitely, if you haven't found it already, check out that Millennials Are Killing Capitalism with OrisanmiBurton. All of them are dope, but that one was really, really well done. Dang, I think I messed up on the clip I played, though. I don't think did I not play it the whole way through? Anyway, I'll check it. See what happened, maybe. Yeah, definitely peace, everybody. Thank you for coming through. And of course, peace, only if you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say. And I'll catch you next time right here at...
And what did you sacrifice?
Calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago for which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight, that set me on a path from which there's no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there's no longer any ground beneath my feet. What is my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. Now, the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror or an audience or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.